We're recording.
All right, it's 2 o'clock and we'll get the meeting started. Mr. Nichols is not here, so I will step in for him. We will start a meeting call to order with, I think we do a roll call. Let's see
Abby
here.
Bemis. Here. Marcus Harris.
Here.
Do I call Sarah's name or do I call Brendan's and then you fill in?
I'm just here for Brendan Hylas as designee.
Okay. Sarah Chaponi. Did I say your name right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Paul Cook.
Here.
Al Nichols.
Okay. Roll call is complete. And Sarah, what was your last name? Sorry.
Chaponi.
Chipotle, okay. And does Sarah, do you get to vote on behalf of Brendan today?
Yes.
Yep, okay, great. All right, so we will go for the approval of the minutes from the March 14th, 2023 meeting. Those minutes are in your packet. If you'd look over those, and if you have any additions or corrections, let me know, or I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Actually, we got to do the individual roll call. I'm sorry. So Marcus,
Yes.
Abby,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
and Colleen, do you vote? You don't vote, do you? Okay. All right, and I am in favor, so all is in favor of approval of the minutes from last meeting. We will go to program financial update and to Colleen.
Great, thank you very much. It is my pleasure to share with you this comprehensive financial update on resources related to the Economic Development Fund. The report shares with members and those concerned the past awards made through the program, current year commitments, and fund balance. Also noted at the end of the report are funds committed from the destination development allocation. I just had a great suggestion about making sure that we note those that are encumbered and left to disperse here in the final column over to the right. So beginning cash balance as of May 1st, 2023 was $726,397. Funding available and balance to receive for 2023 is $260,000, leaving a funding total of $986,397. Excuse me. Taking into consideration grants not dispersed but encumbered for 2021, 2022, and 2023 leaves an available economic development fund balance of $691,397. Questions?
Colleen, what's the 10,000 from 2021? Is that?
If you follow the line over to the left, that relates to Sweet Potato Catering, LLC. At the end of last year, we did receive a request from, I'm going to slaughter her name, Katie
Koropkin?
Koropkin,
Yep.
thank you, to extend the length of, or the time of performance on that grant.
So she's still, the project is going forward? Okay,
Yes.
great. Great. Okay, any other questions on that?
Just one question in terms of the Pike Creek Holdings. That project is still moving forward and making progress?
As far as I know, yes, it is.
Oh, awesome, awesome.
Okay, any other questions?
Elaine probably said this, but I was processing too many things. The red lines are because, why the red highlights? Just not dispersed yet?
The what is not dispersed is over in the right-hand column, the left to disperse, and red is just, or pink is just calling out the multi-year commitment.
Got it, okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, hearing none, we will go into the review of the applications received, and I believe El Pino LLC Doing business as El Gran Patron Mexican Restaurant is up first.
Excellent. Thank you so much. The matter before you today, as you mentioned, is for El Pino LLC, doing business as El Gran Patron Mexican Restaurant. The owner is Gustavo Enriquez. Gustavo has been operating El Gran Patron Mexican Restaurant since 2013. After years of leasing the space, Enriquez purchased the building in 2021 for $650,000 and began to slowly make interior improvements, flooring, tile, kitchen upgrades, and painting to make the dining experience better for his customers. The building purchase was financed by Savista Bank. El Gran Patron is located at 1001 West Perkins. It's adjacent to Sandusky High School football stadium and the nearby Sandusky City Schools complex. Mr. Enriquez prides himself on being a restaurant that serves the community and welcomes families and patrons for celebrations. Enriquez's children, spouse, and sister all work at the restaurant with him. Late last year, Mr. Enriquez began planning for additional larger, more expensive, and necessary improvements to the facility. His plan is to resurface the parking lot, install new walkways and lighting around the facility, as well as a new HVAC system. Mr. Enriquez is committed to Sandusky. He was recently approached about moving his business to a nearby location in a neighboring township. He resisted that temptation, citing El Gran Patron's home is Sandusky. I recently had the chance to meet with Mr. Enriquez and his son Eduardo a few weeks ago. His passion for completing these improvements and for making the dining experience appealing and memorable was incredibly evident. His original application included acquisition costs, which when we met, I explained we typically do not fund those. So he agreed to amending his request for support. As noted in the project summary, Enriquez has made down payments for nearly all work to be done. He has brokered payment terms with some of his contractors, and he will use operating resources to pay for improvements. Project uses are all related to the improvements in a total of $140,671. His sources, if you were to approve a $15,000 grant from the Sandusky Development Fund, the balance of which would be paid for by his own funds. So today I'm recommending a $15,000 Economic Development Fund grant, if approved by this committee, on the condition that the applicant obtain any relevant permits and display a sign evidencing the support for 1 year after the project. Project improvements shall be completed by the end of this calendar year, December 31st, 2023.
Thanks, Colleen. I will disclose that I have a conflict with this one as well and cannot vote on the matter. Any comments or questions for Colleen?
Just a comment, and reading over the application and just seeing the commitment to maintain their investment within the community and the support of a family-owned business and operating, I think is inspiring. And then also taking into account the fact that the business is on one of the busiest roadways that we have in the city, and that thoroughfare leading into the city. I think that supporting this particular grant request, I think, is in our best interest, as it kind of highlights and spines a spotlight on a great asset to the community. So congratulations to Mr. Enriquez for not only purchasing the building and becoming an owner and getting those assets and building wealth within his family and for the community, but sticking with Sandusky.
Marcus, if I might add too, just last evening we approved the South Side plan, and this is within the South Side footprint. So an investment into this integral and important neighborhood of the city of Sandusky would be wonderfully received right on the heels of the adoption of that plan.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Marcus, second by Abby. Any further comments? All those in favor, we will go to roll call. Marcus,
Yes.
Abby,
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, the grant is approved, 3-0 with 1 abstention. And we will go on to RGCC Properties LLC for renovation of 1118 West Washington Ave.
Wonderful, thank you. RGCC Properties LLC for the property at 1118 West Washington. Applicant is Carrie Haskins. The principal owners are Carrie and Scott Haskins. For the purposes of today's discussion, I will refer to Carrie as the applicant. Ms. Haskins became aware of the availability for sale of this property at 1118 West Washington in 2022. The building was built around 1890. It was the last remaining grocery store established before the 20th century up until the late 1980s. The grocery store, Wickman's, was run by descendants of the original store owner according to 1982 Ohio Historic Inventory. At some time during the 1980s, the building was purchased by a new owner who operated the Variety Beverage. Its most recent use, which was storage. The structure was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1982. Ms. Haskins purchased the building in August of 2022 for $175,000 with the intention to renovate, restore it, and return it to productive use. The purchase and partial renovation costs are supported by a $300,000 loan from Civista. I do note that I did make a mistake in that write-up. The building will be converted into 2 residential apartments and 1 commercial storefront on the first floor. The commercial office space will be leased to an existing Sandusky business, which will result in the retainage of an employee within the city. The renovation or restoration of the building entails exterior and interior work, including painting, brick repair, installation of new doors, windows, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and repairs, replacement of walls, ceiling, and floors. Literally a top-to-bottom renovation. Ms. Haskins did seek a certificate of appropriateness from the City of Sandusky Landmark Commission and was granted with conditions in January of 2023. Currently, there is a stop work order at the property. Work toward correcting window replacement following guidelines as set forth by the commission is underway. As recently as this week, Ms. Haskins has had a conversation with Chief Planner Aaron Blair about the new windows that have been purchased according to specification by Landmarks, and those will be installed and that stop work order lifted. Because of the cost of historic restoration, Ms. Haskins has sought assistance from the City of Sandusky's Economic Development Grant to support the expense of renovation. Purchase price and building acquisition is noted as $175,000, and total construction costs, as included in your package, are estimated at $212,550 for a total project cost of $387,550. If granted, a $15,000 grant, which is the recommendation today, coupled with bank financing secured by Civista and an injection of her own resources or cash, the project then balances out. The return to productive use, restoration of a historic structure, retainage of a commercial business and employee in the city with the lease of the space, and the potential to spur follow-on investment in the area are all reasons I am recommending this project for grant assistance. Ms. Haskins' application requests support in the amount of $44,000. I'm recommending $15,000.
Thanks, Colleen. Any comments or questions regarding the application?
So looking at the design blueprints, I noticed that the ground level apartment is directly behind the office space.
Yes.
And so it was just sort of like trying to figure out where was the second apartment at. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that is true. That's the apartment is directly behind it.
It is.
And What are her plans? You said that she was looking to occupy one of the units and then rent out the other?
She would actually rent out both. Ms. Haskins does live out of town. She would use that space when visiting family here in Sandusky. She is the daughter of a Sandusky native and does spend a lot of time back in this area as she did as a young child. But her intention would be to short-term rent those apartments. Understanding that short-term rental is not necessarily something that this committee would support, I reduced the amount she was requesting so that those dollars could be focused on the build-out of the commercial office space.
Would the current moratorium that was passed last night affect her plans to be able to utilize the space?
I do not believe it will because it is in an area that is zoned for such transient rental.
What's the current moratorium?
Last night, the city commission approved a moratorium for 18 months for any new transient rental overlays and zonings that would be applied to the city, so we can kind of reevaluate the ordinance that governs that particular practice. And so there's a pause on any granting of the overlays into any new areas.
What do you mean,
So like
overlay?
new areas, but if you're already in one, you can still apply.
That is my understanding. Mhm.
When I read through this, I guess I didn't realize that, that the business that was going in was not her business. And I don't know if we've ever awarded money to a pure real estate owner and not an operator of a business. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I can't recall.
Well, I think that in this type of context, and for future, to lay in the ground for future business owners that are occupying lease space, that if we are granting anything, it should be to the actual owner of the property, if they're going to do property to revitalize the property.
Yeah, I'm saying, I don't think we've ever granted any money directly to just a real estate owner, not a business operator. Unless we're considering the VRBO a business operation, which personally I don't, but.
I think we have done it to the real estate owners, I think of Shores and Islands building as one. But typically, part of the justification was around the economic impact of the tenant, which in this case,
I
we
didn't see
don't
that.
have a ton of information on, and the retention,
Are you able to
there's
share
some
that?
limited economic impact, I would think, of the single tenant.
I think the other example would be the Schmidt Architect building, where we granted it to the property owner, and then the tenant is the actual architectural firm.
It's the same. They're one and the same.
Can you speak into your mics, please?
Yes, I think that the other example of that was we had granted the money to the property owner, which was the wife.
Oh, the wife, yeah, seriously.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And the business was the Schmidt Architects that went into that business. In terms of this variety beverage, that's an active business that employs.
It is not.
It's not.
It has been closed. My understanding, it's been closed for quite some time, and the building itself has been used as storage.
This is the building next to the Better Half, right?
Looks
it-
like it's across the street, right?
It is across the street.
Across the, oh, okay,
It's a
yeah.
Bicycle
corner,
shop is
yes.
next.
Yeah, okay.
They have like a large gated
Yeah.
parking lot.
Right next to it, yes.
I knew some people that looked at that property. This is an interesting use of it.
And does she have a tenant lined up in terms of that office
She
space?
does. The tenant is, I'm checking here, Fast Track Merchant Solutions. They are a processor of credit card and merchant services. It's a credit card and merchant service business.
So just the office space would be occupied,
Exactly.
and we'd have the employees and some economic development in terms of the business in there and the employees and the income tax. And so there is that element to it. But I agree with you, Paul, like it's ambiguous ground in that this is almost a real estate kind of investment.
And I think too, it's just an interesting slate in the sense that you can see it's the same grant amount as El Patron, where you can see much more literal employment, business income than this property. I also think this is a key corridor of the city. I appreciate the stabilization of historic structures. So I'm comfortable with us participating in some way around the office space. Somewhat hard to discern what pieces of this project connect to that.
Yeah, because, I mean, without,
And again, for an example, at previous meetings where we wanted to assist the business where we couldn't find as much fixed costs, we had to like peel that out to then get to our eligible percentage. So what of this investment is the first floor property versus the short-term rentals?
that's a good point, yeah.
And then do we feel comfortable with that percentage?
Because the original ask was what, 44,000?
44,000.
And
So
the
that's where
historic
you
windows
got to
are
your
part of that
15?
office?
That is,
Okay.
Are the historic windows part of that office space?
they are.
That's the 44,000.
That the original ask was.
The 44,000 is the windows, it looks like,
It is the correction of, not the correction, it is incorporating the design guidelines and the features that were required by the Landmarks Commission.
And initially, the investor was going to take this project on without looking for any assistance.
They were.
But when they ran
She
into
was.
the hiccup about the historic renovation of the windows, because I do believe there was stop work order was happened, and then this kind of reevaluated, and she came to the table.
Absolutely. I'm happy to work with Ms. Haskins if this isn't something the committee is comfortable passing today or hearing today. I'm happy to work with her on the construction costs and come up with a percentage that would be related to that office space.
You know, I think that's a great idea, just because I just don't want to open the door to VRBOs coming in, and, because to me, that just doesn't create anything there's no economic impact to the tax dollars that support the program, I don't think. And, you know, I'm generally against supporting the VRBOs in this committee. I mean, I'm all for them, whatever, but, and it sounds like if there's a moratorium, then the city may be having some concerns too. As it sits today, I would be in favor of using the 44,000 number for the windows based on the fact that it is a historic building and everything, and then basically say 10% of that at, you know, $4,400 is essentially what that would work out to, which is what I would be in favor of today. But, you know, I would be, if she wants to change it and give us a more detailed number on what it is for the business side of things, not the VRBO side, I'm happy to entertain that too. But that's where I am after looking at it. But
I think that's a good perspective in terms of what we have here right now in front of us at that number, at that cost, and typically what we've done historically. It does sound like a good idea if we are supportive. But if you do feel that you could go back and reevaluate this, you know, please advise if you feel that that would be a better route. But I do like Paul's idea in terms of granting based off the $44,000 cost for the windows, which would be associated with that office space, which would be associated with business and economic development.
Without that analysis, I can't make, you know, a recommendation today but I know that she would be willing to work with us. I mean, she has indicated any support would be helpful.
And if it helps you, I am willing to make a motion at 4,400 today, and then it can be presented to her 4,400, or if you want to provide breakouts, so then that way we don't, because I'm comfortable with the 44,000 being allocated to the restoration of the historic building. So then that allows her to continue the project and not have to wait a month or whatever it may be to do that. But I'm just, you know, that
Yeah.
I would make that motion now, and if you guys support it or whatnot, but totally up to you guys. But I don't know if that helps you at all, but.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. And we can leave it up to her, because I do see some items in the original proposal that, like the pressure washing of the exterior of the building. I think I saw something else that sounds like it's related to the beautification of the building and the exterior. So if she wants to revise it, she can, but we could
Okay.
do a conditional
Okay,
approval for the windows.
very fair.
Sarah, you got anything? Yeah. Sorry, waited for you to take a drink there and then I asked, but.
No, I definitely agree with that analysis. And my biggest concern was the stop work order, but it sounds like that's almost solved, so.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, then I would make a motion to approve a grant in the amount of $4,400 for RGCC Properties LLC with the availability or the opportunity to to revise the request and bring it back with the understanding that we would consider a grant based on renovations related to the historic nature of the building and the business space.
I second that.
Got that, Quinn?
I got it all.
Yeah, all right. All right, motion by me and a second by Marcus. We'll go to voting. Marcus?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Paul Cook says yes. Sarah?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. 4 in favor, so that motion would pass as presented. And we would go to any other questions or comments regarding any of the applications received today?
Can I raise a question for more general discussion around acquisition? I am curious, it's deemed ineligible in the guidelines, or it's more practice of the group that we have not considered that eligible towards assistance? I would just love to get some clarity from either the guidelines or a perspective of the committee members. And I ask in my mind because a lot of the programs that I work with through the state or other incentive-making agencies do consider that capital investment in eligible costs, and it can significantly impact the size of a grant one way or the other. So curious thoughts or general direction.
My thought is, I like the way that it was in El Pino's today and the fact that it was mentioned and discussed, but then not included in the calculations. Because I think it's important to know that somebody put out $650,000. I don't think from our perspective, the committee should be assisting with the purchase of real estate. And sometimes if you include the acquisition costs, I mean, you really beef up that number in the project uses, so kind of distorts the percentages there. If we say, hey, we're at 10% and there's $1 million purchase and $100,000 renovation, I mean, it's a major difference in the percentage. So I like the way it's shown where or even in the narrative where we have a line for, but it's not included in the total project cost, where the project costs are specific to construction but that's just my view there.
Is your thought that it shouldn't be included because it has its own value, like it doesn't need incenting?
Yeah, to me, I just don't think that as an investor, the purchase of the real estate is a business decision on their end, not directly related to economic development, which as an economic development person, I'm probably completely wrong in that sense, but that's just my view that that's their risk, and that our function as this committee is to help them take their purchase done by them, get to the next level where it fits our landscape or what we're looking for, the beautification, things like that. So that's kind of how I look at it. And then job retention, seems like an important thing to throw on the end there.
And in the general terms, it does give an example of a new construction or renovation of existing facilities. And so when you look at that in terms of, I may acquire some land, but I can get a grant to build a new building, but I can't get the grant to buy the building. right? Or I can't include within my project the acquisition cost of buying a building. But if I had a project and I was building something new, it seems that it's given as an example of an eligible cost. So I think there might be some conflict in that, or confusion, room for gray area.
Well, we'd take out land acquisition, right, on the new construct. I mean, I think that's what I'm trying to get at, like a general, I mean, I'm not responsible for policy in this joint, but what our policy would be.
I'm glad you raised this, because I've gone back to past guidelines and scoured through them when there were various different programs as related to economic development. There was a substantial renovation and small business assistance, clearly noted in the guidelines for substantial investment. They do back out. It prohibits the use of acquisition costs in the total calculation. So it is a great point that you're raising, and something that I would love to have recommendations from this committee, but we'll also be speaking with staff and leadership about how the program evolves and what those policy decisions are. Because there hasn't been consistency of late,
Yeah.
and we need to be consistent.
And consistency, I think, is the importance, the most important thing, because it leads to transparency and then trust with the public sector, which is always important,
Absolutely.
especially when Al's not here. You didn't give your opinion on that, I've noticed.
I can see your banker lens on not including it. I'm used to it being a signifier of commitment to economic development. I'm spending a significant amount of money to generate a viable business. That's what I'm looking for assistance with. But these programs are going to play a smaller role in a project than some of the tools that we work with at ECADEC. And so I like the framing of these dollars being used as sort of the extra. We want it to be a slightly better project than you thought possible, or the bank thought possible for your pro forma. So we're going to grant make for a different purpose.
Well, and I think you talk about El Patron's application. Without that 15,000, he's probably not doing a parking lot, he's patching holes.
Yeah.
And that's what I would rather see, is the support there than saying to a developer, if you want to buy a $1.2 million building, we'll give you X, but if you buy a $2.2 million building, we'll give you much more. That's the.
I do, until there's consensus around it, I do like the point about it being captured somewhat consistently then in the lovely narrative you guys prepare for us. Because the percentage, even on that second one where it was listed, is even backing that out, we were still within 10%.
Yep.
I think the committee members recognize that with what you presented, but just, again, for transparency and clarity's sake, for the general public who might not be doing that same back of the napkin, it would be good to present consistently.
Okay.
If you can.
And I would say this is the first time that I can remember where you actually mentioned the actual request up front, because I think that's helpful for us to understand and appreciate where the ask is coming from, where the applicant is thinking, hey, I'm at 44,000, because it's easier if you come in at 15,000 and us to say, 4,400 without knowing that you've already kind of done a lot of homework to get it to where you're at. Because I think in the end, we want to be, good stewards of the money and get as many people in the program as possible, because it's a great program for the city. And I think it really has helped some economic development, and it has helped people do projects that I think that they otherwise would not do.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments on Abby's acquisition costs? Any other comments before we go into public participation, just general discussion type stuff from the committee? I assume everyone knows Colleen. This is my first meeting with Colleen, but I think I might have missed last meeting, so that's true. Everyone knows Colleen. All right, great. All right, good. All All right. you
Yes,
keep
we
that
are
out of the
familiar.
minutes then, don't worry about adding that, all right? All right, so we will move on to public participation and comments.
I do.
Sharon?
Mr. Cook, you always have some good suggestions, and you always take my questions away.
I'm here for you, Sharon.
Do fully agree with you on some of these things.
Oh, come on.
I know, because you're a banker and you've been through this stuff, and I think we're getting away from the original intent of the grants is to rehab some of these buildings. And now, we had a big whopper of a grant just recently, and there were pools listed, landscaping, parking lots. Now, this Mexican restaurant has a parking lot. He's going to pave, and he's going to do driveways, sidewalks, and lighting. I just can't see this. I mean, I can see remodeling the buildings, but we're getting way off the deep end into the weeds on this, and we should pull it back in, I think. So that was that one. And especially the allocations, Mr. Cook, he brought this up a couple times. The acquisitions are getting way out of hand. They're almost up to $300,000. They're whopper. So we need to rein that in too. I don't know if you're going to include that, maybe we should have a point system, and the point system should have, this acquisition, maybe it should be capped if you're going to have that. Several other things like transient, like this one lady here on Washington Street, she wants to do a transient apartment up there, and I know she's remodeling that storefront, so maybe some points could be taken off because she's using that as transient versus a rental. Maybe something like that. You could have a point system. It's just a suggestion. But she, on the Washington one here, the Wickman grocery store, she doesn't even live in the city. And I agree with you, Mr. Cook. We should be looking at that too. And there again, maybe the point system could figure in on that. When somebody comes and there's like 3 or 4 different things in the point system, you just subtract the point system when she says, well, I want so much money. Well, you're going to say, well, we're going to take the points away because of, other things that you've got figured in here. And we're trying to promote regular rentals. So we're going to take the point system on that transient rental and come down on the grant we're going to offer you. Now, if you want to do regular rental, then we'll just put the points back in there for her, something like that. So that's, Colleen just explained to me on the short-term rental that we're on a moratorium. I know from Monday's meeting that we are. And hopefully something gets mapped out on that, because this city's going to be in big trouble with all these transient rentals. They're driving the price up on regular rentals. People can't afford to live here, and that's a big thing because you have a lot of minimum wage people living in this area that they can't afford an apartment anymore. And if they can't, they're going to be moving out. So therefore, you don't have the employment is not going to be there for all that's going on in Sandusky here. I mean, that's just common sense, right, Abby?
Well,
With you on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ms. Johnson, in terms of, looking to evolve the transient rental program and balancing that versus the impact it has on rentals and housing, affordable housing. I take calls from individuals who are living in hotels who cannot find any place to rent. It's too expensive. And with the season coming, those things could move forward. So I do agree that we need to take all of those considerations. And then also your policy suggestion in terms of having a point system, a kind of matrix that standardizes things as you go through might be applicable in this sense. And
it's like the Washington Street girl here. She doesn't live in this city, so you could subtract subtract some points for that. But she is remodeling an old historical building. Okay, the points would come off for that. The points would come off for transient housing. If she wants to, return it to a regular rental, then we would tell her she would get more points and more money on the grant money. So, but there's got to be some kind of penalty here for this, for not living in the city and doing transient rentals. The destination fund balance, I would like to see that on your little cheat sheet up here. Colleen and I just talked about that, because I hear that some of the grants are coming out of the destination fund, and when you vote for that or recommend, the final vote goes to the commissioners, but when you recommend, you need to know if there's enough money in that destination fund before you proceed. So, and you don't get Miss Reader in a bind here, looking for money after the fact you've already granted the grant, right? Put
Thank
her
you.
on the hot seat there, and that's not right.
Sharon, thank you for that suggestion. I would never put Miss Reader in the hot seat. I just want that on public record.
I know we're under different management now, so there's going to be a change here, I hope. That's just something
Is
I'm
our
putting out.
committee charged with those approvals, though?
I don't believe so.
Pardon?
Is our committee responsible for monitoring the destination development grants?
Michelle, you
So
wanna-
if I may.
Yes.
So the Destination Development Fund, just to answer Sharon's question, right now, there's going to be over $1 million
If
sitting
you
into
could
it.
say your name and.
I'm sorry, Michelle
Yeah,
Reader,
and
Finance
your-
Director with the City of Sandusky.
Thanks, Michelle.
So the Destination Development Fund, according to the way that was established, and it was established due to the increase in admissions and parking tax. So there's $700,000 that go into this fund basically every year. And it is not the intent that those $700,000 each year will be completely used for grants. But there is the possibility of using those funds when a project needs additional funding, or if we find that, it's a good use of those funds, because that Destination Development Fund should be used for projects that are downtown Sandusky or in the corridor, specifically the Route 6 corridor. So previously, that Mecca Motel project that came through was eligible as being funded from Destination Development. So the short answer is yes, if it's coming to you guys as an economic development grant, you guys will have authority over the use of those funds, but the full $700,000, I don't anticipate being used completely for economic development grants.
What are some other uses for that? Marketing, advertising, I assume, stuff like that, or was it?
And no, I believe it's more like catalytic projects. We've talked about quite a few different things, whether it's a Columbus Avenue project that's been talked about, or if there's a downtown hotel project, there's other needs out there for those funds.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, and I have one more question here. On your little sheet here, if you would put, Colleen said there's 3 grants here that are still outstanding, that they're still encumbered and haven't been paid yet because they haven't finished their project yet. If you would put the date that this, I think the date is started up here. The completion date, that's what I want to see, the completion date on the encumbered, so we know if they're past due or what. If it's past due, does that grant have to come back to this committee to get reapproved for 6 more months or something? Because it looks like staff is determining that, and I think that should come back to this committee, whether or not they need 6 more months on that. That should be approved, come back to this committee to be approved and not done by staff.
I think the example that we can lean to is for the marketplace or the Old Cardinal grocery store, where things were not going along. There was no progress being made. It was years since the money had been granted, and we had a motion that recommended that the city commission rescind that, and then that went up to them, and then they made the decision to rescind that grant after giving the investors some time and opportunity to bring things all the way to Bright. And so I think that we have the ability to recommend that, but only the city commission can rescind.
And Ms. Johnson, I really like the suggestion about adding a column that talks about time of performance or completion date as
Right.
per the grant agreement. And part of the report to this committee can be where folks are lagging behind if we've received requests, because sometimes development takes time. Things happen within the market, things happen in our world, as we saw through COVID, where folks might need additional time. The project still looks viable. Administratively, as staff, we have the ability, as far as I understand, to grant if someone were to submit a request for extension. But it would be my commitment to bring that to this committee so that they are aware that those requests are being made.
Right, right.
And that's probably something that as we talk about the, adding the acquisition costs, I mean, that's a policy type decision. And that's probably something to me, because I'm actually in agreement with Sharon that that they should be good for so long, because I don't want projects that are ready to move dirt to be slowed down for people that are still trying to figure out what they're doing. So, but those are good comments. So
I know that they're working out some policies and procedures on this, which is a good thing. So it's even across the board for everybody, because it can't be, okay, this person gets this and another person doesn't get that. If you're going to put landscaping in, everybody should have landscaping across the board. I don't want to see you overstuff the grants, though, with these little things like landscaping and other things, instead of concentrating on taking a building and rehabbing it. So that's something that the staff's going to have to figure out. But that's all I have to say.
Sharon,
Thank you.
we appreciate your comments, and I would say that there's some good suggestions in there, and that it must be a sign of springtime in the sunshine, as there's been more agreement, record number of agreement between the public and the committee members today, so. And maybe it's just Al's not here, so who knows? A lot of options there.
Thank you for
Okay.
your leadership, Colleen.
Right. Yes. Okay, so that is public participation. We will have a motion to adjourn
So moved.
and a second.
Second.
All right, and I'm not going to take a roll call on that one. We will just accept it. The next meeting is, we ask that you block your calendar for May 30th at 2 PM, as we may have a request that was bumped from today for some further information that may be brought on May 30th, and staff will let us know on that. And then the next meeting after that will be July 11th. And that we ask generally that you, if you cannot attend a meeting, that you notify staff 2 days prior, or if you have conflicts, it's always nice to know beforehand for scheduling purposes. All that, I think we are adjourned. Thank you.